Good morning, everyone. Let's do some prayers and then we will start with our Upanishad studies. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhur Tatsavitruvarenayam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat Asto Ma Sadgamya Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya Mrityorma Mritam Gamya Om Sahna Bhavtu Sahna Bhunaktu Saviryam Karvavahi Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahi Om Shanti 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 Om. We started the new chapter last week. And this section is a little deeper. So let me give you the summary of it first. I might have given you a little bit of the summary last time, but let me do it again. Because this section, which is called Ashval Brahman, gives a number of meditations. And these are like a supplement. They could be the supplement on the other meditations which he has been talking about previously. Pran meditations, like a Udgit Brahman. That's where we learned the Pran meditations. So in this section, there's a very interesting and instructive story of King Janak's yajna, and also the debate that followed among the saints and the scholars who were present there. So on King Janak's side, there were some sages, and then Rishi Yagyavalkya's side also, there were some scholars. And then they gave 4 meditations. By doing these meditations, we can transcend with the limitations which are caused by sometimes the accessories of the sacrifice, or the time in the form of solar day and night caused by the rotations of the earth, time manifesting as the dark and the bright fortnights which are caused by the movement of the moons. And also sometimes there could be a limitation when we want to attain the heavenly world. So this heavenly world seems so glaring to us, and we don't transcend that. All the factors involved in a sacrifice are mortal, being subject to the death. That means they are all temporary. The sacrificer himself, the sacrifice, the various accessories used for it, or even the act of sacrifice, and also the results that accrue from the sacrifice, they are all perishable. This is what they are discussing. They all end one day or the other. But if an aspirant or sacrificer understands it properly, can free himself from death, if he meditates on speech, fire, the presiding deity of speech, and the priest, Hotra, as identical with himself. So that means we got to learn to see the oneness. If we see the oneness, we can transcend it. We will see that another meditation, they teach that, hey, meditation on the identity of the eye, the organ of the sight, its presiding deity, the sun, and Adharvyo is the Yajurved priest. And that's another thing you got to get familiar with. The different names of the priests also. In the Vedic time, in the Yajna, there were 4 priests. They were called Ritviks. And you will see the names of these priests in this section. There is a Hotri. Hotri recites the Rig Ved hymns. Or those are the summons to those deities. Adharvyu, which I just mentioned before, manages the physical aspects, builds the altar, prepares the material, and recites Yajurved verses. Okay? And Udgat sings the Samved hymns musically. That's why summons are very musical and very difficult to recite. And the 4th priest is called Brahma, the chief priest who is overseeing the whole ritual. He will correct the errors and he will chant the Atharva Ved verses. So these are the names you will see in this section. So that's why I wanted to mention this name. Hotri for Rig Ved, Adharvyu for the Yajur Ved, Udgat for the Sam Ved, and Brahma. And this is just a title for that. It's not a Brahma as the creator. Brahma is the title given to one of the priests who is chanting the Atharva Veda. Okay? So in the entire ceremony, in the Vedic time, that's how it used to be. And there were some other priests also, not just these 4. They used to have a lot of other priests chanting the Vedic hymns. So if he meditates on the identity of the eye, the organ of sight, its presiding deity, the sun, and Adharvyu, he would transcend the limitations of time caused by the solar days and nights. Meditation on the identity of Pran, the vital force, which is functioning in the body, which is a cosmic counterpart to Hiranyagarbha. And the Samved priest would recite that. If the sacrificer is still attached to the heavenly worlds, he will definitely release from this mortal world, but he will get attached to the heavenly world. So it all depends where our mind is. Even while doing these great sacrifices in the presence of all these great priests reciting these beautiful hymns. There are even more meditations are given in this section. First is on the 3 classes of Rig mantras. They are the introductory and the preliminary, the intermediary, or obnational. The result is the attainment of everything in the 3 worlds. And the second meditation is on the 3 kinds of oblations offered and the mantras chanted by the Adharvyu priest in the flame of sacrificial fire, which goes up straight in the flame that makes a loud noise, and in the flame that penetrates, as it were, into earth. In the Vedas, it's said that the attainment of the worlds of God or the mains can be attained through these. And the third meditation is on the Vishwa Devas also. And Vishwa Devas are infinite in number. Sure, they are the manifestation of the one God, the mind, and the modifications of the mind being infinite. Infinite are the gods, and infinite are the results of this meditation. And fourth and the last meditation we'll see in this chapter, in this section, is on the three kinds of rig mantras referred to: the preliminary, the intermediary, and the laudatory, which are identical with the pran, apan, and vyan, respectively. And the result of meditation is the attainment by the meditator of the three worlds: the earth, the sky, and the heaven. So you can see that in this section, a lot of information, and it definitely gets quite overwhelming if we are not familiar with the terms or the ultimate goal of human life. Okay, so we looked at the first verse of this section last week, and over there, the translation of that verse was Om Janak, emperor of Videha, performed a sacrifice in which there was a profusion of gifts. Because there's always a charities, which we call dakshina, is given after these sacrifices. Brahmins from Kuru and Panchal were assembled there. A desire arose in the mind of Emperor Janak of Videha to know who was the most learned among those Brahmins. He had 1,000 cows confined in a place, and on the horns of each cow was attached gold weighing 10 parts. Okay, so it's like a charity he was giving, which was worth a lot. Okay, so now let's look at the next verse, because we did talk about this last time. Tanah uvach brahmana bhagavanta yo wo brahmishta स एताव उद्यतम इति तेह ब्राह्मणा न ददृशुः अथः याज्ञवल्क्यः स्वयं एव ब्रह्मचारिन् उवाच एतः सौम्योदज सांश्रवः इति ताहोदाचकारः तेह ब्राह्मणा शुक्रतु कथं नो ब्रह्मिष्टो ब्रुविम् एतिः अथ जनकस्य वेदहस्य हेताश्वलो बभूव स हैनं पप्रच्छ त्वं नु खलु नो याज्ञवल्क्यः ब्रह्मिष्ठोऽसि इति स उवाच नमो वेयं ब्रह्मिष्ठाय कुर्मः गोकामा एव वयं स्म इति तं हवतत् एव प्रष्टुं दधे होताश्वलः. He said to them, so who is he? King Janaka. Venerable Brahmins, let him who is the greatest Vedic scholar amongst you drive these cows home. The Brahmins did not dare. Then Yajnavalkya said to his own pupil, Samarshevs, drive these cows home, my son. He drove them. The Brahmins were angry, thinking, how can he assert that he is the greatest Vedic scholar amongst us? Janak, emperor of Videha, had an invoking priest named Ashval. He now asked Yajnavalkya, Yajnavalkya, are you indeed the greatest Vedic scholar amongst us? The other replied, I salute the greatest Vedic scholar. I only wish to have the cows. So he only wanted the dakshina. He didn't think he was the greatest of the scholars. Thereupon, the invoking priest Ashval resolved to question him. So this is how the conversation started between those priests and the scholars. So after having resolved to give those cows in presentation to the most like an advanced scholar, the best of the best among those Brahmins, the king openly declared in the assembly that he who was most learned in the scriptures might take away the cows. There was definitely a silence in the assembly for a few minutes because the Brahmins, they wouldn't declare themselves to be the most learned. There is a humility in them. And especially, how could anyone do it when King Janak himself, the greatest scholar, was present there? And everybody knew that. And he was the one who was presiding over the whole proceeding. So it was not easy for anyone to challenge his learning and wisdom. So the assembly was full with numerous well-known scholars. Sure, King Janak, Yagyavalkya, Shakalya, Kahola, and others. Who could dare to rise up to combat with those great giants in the knowledge of the scriptures? And when none of them rose up, the sage Yagyavalkya boldly took the step of calling one of his disciples, and the disciple's name was Samshrav. And he had studied the Samved under sage Yagyavalkya. And Rishi Yagyavalkya gave the order to drive the cows to his ashram. And Yagyavalkya himself was a teacher of Yajurveda. So, teacher of Yajurveda and student who was a well-versed in Samveda. We are all familiar with them. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna has mentioned the summons, the Samveda mantras to be the greatest. Because when the mantras of the Rig Veda are set to music and sung, they are called summons or Sam mantras. Yagyavalkya must have been a master of these two Vedas also. Because if his student was well versed in Samveda, so Rishi must have been too. And Atharva Veda is subsidiary to these Vedas. So you can say that the Rishi Yagyavalkya was no doubt proficient in all four Vedas. So his disciple, Samrasva, drove all the 1,000 cows to his guru's ashram. And everybody present over there was enraged at this daring act of sage Yagyavalkya. How could he challenge their learning? By announcing himself to be the unsurpassing scholar among them. And there was in that assembly the Hotra priest, the priest well versed in Rig Veda of King Janak, and his name was Ashval by name. And he was also enraged by this unexpected and sudden act of Yajnavalkya in driving away the cows without establishing his superiority over others in the Vedic recitation. And Ashval called upon Yajnavalkya and asked him in insulting and detesting tone if he alone was the best Vedic scholar in that assembly. With this rude approach, Yajnavalkya reacted. He said that he never meant to challenge the supremacy of their learning. He also said, I bow down before and pay tribute to the best Vedic scholar, but I just want the cows. He said, I am desirous of possessing the cows, and therefore my disciple has, under my directions, driven the cows home. So he says, you could be great scholars, but I want the cows. So by these remarks, Yajnavalkya indirectly wanted Ashval and others present there to question him if necessary and get themselves satisfied about his superior wisdom. So he's declared himself the winner without even going into the debate. So Yajnavalkya was then questioned by Ashval, and the sage replied all his questions. So now in the next few verses, we'll see this conversation. So now you can see the way this section is, the way this story goes. So let's look at verse number 3. Yajnavalkya iti hovach yad idam sarvam mrityu na aptam sarvam mrityu na bhi apannam ken yajmanoho mrityur aptim uchyat iti ho होत्र त्विजः अग्निवाचः वाग्वे यज्ञस्य होता तदेयं वाक् सो एयम अग्नि स होता स मुक्ति स अति मुक्ति. So this is page number 187, verse number 3. Yajnavalkya said, since all this is caught by death and overpowered by it, so that means the death, through what does the sacrificer transcend the reach of death? Through the invoking priest and the organ of speech looked upon as fire. The sacrificer's organ of speech is indeed the invoking priest. Now this organ of speech of the sacrificer is this fire. Fire is the invoking priest. That fire is the means of liberation, and liberation is transcendence. So this is the literal translation of this verse number 3. Generally, when we perform a sacrifice with some desire, it could be the desire of wealth, children, heaven, or any other source of sense happiness. That desire is bound by attachment to those things which we get. So that means desire is connected with those worldly achievements. Any ritualistic work which is performed due to the attachment and desire for sense pleasure leads the sacrificer into the clutches of death in the form of a transmigration. Because effect of all those desires is eventually either pleasure or pain. Pleasure when we achieve it, pain if we don't. Or even if we achieve it, there's always a sense of losing them. There's a little worry. Or if we see somebody else having more than us, again, there is a pain, some form of pain. So because of this attachment, which manifests itself in the form of desire of progeny, wealth, or even higher heavenly worlds. Because even in the heavenly worlds, don't we see that king of the Devatas, Indra, always worried somebody will take his position? So there's always a fear, always a worry. So that's why the sacrifices of this level do not confer freedom upon the sacrificer because of these attachments. On the other hand, meditation combined with sacrifice, performed with the accessories such as fire or the priest, does not become fruitful unless they are freed from attachment. So this attachment is the one which we have to let go. So now that we know that the performance of a sacrifice, and sacrifice over here means yajna, remember that. And it could be a fire ceremony or it could be any one of other 12 yajnas which Lord Krishna mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. There are many ways to do these sacrifices. So the motive of fulfillment of an objective leads the individual to attachment, which is a form of death. This is the death he's talking about. And we have to discover, as a sadhaks, the means of transcending this attachment. How do we let go of this attachment and make our meditations, make our yajna a successful yajna? Because anything which we do, we want to be successful in it. So these rishis are taking our mind towards that. How can we become successful? And the sacrifice or the yajna, which is an aid to higher meditation, or which will help us to do the higher meditations, they are talking about here. And over here in this verse, he's saying that they are twofold. One with the reference to ritualistic sacrifice, and the other with the reference to the individual. So that's why Ashval questioned Yagyavalkya as to the way of release from death by means of sacrifice. Because he knew very well that all ritualistic works performed due to ignorance are overpowered and overtaken by death. And what is that death actually? Because normally we understand death only when we let go of this body. To hold on to the view that the sacrificer is different from the deity of the sacrifice, to perform the sacrificial rite for material gain, or to remain contented with the external show and result of the sacrifice, or to view the sacrificial rites as the bestower of prosperity and gain, in this world or in a heavenly world, is death. So that means by doing the sacrifice, if we don't attain to the highest, where we transcend everything, it is a death. So when Ashwal asked that question, Yajnavalkya replies that by meditating on the Hotra priest, the individual organ of speech through which mantras are chanted, and fire, the presiding deity of that organ, as one and not different. A person can be liberated from attachment and can be freed from death. And how is that? When we do these yajnas, how do we take our mind towards that level? We all know that speech is the means of chanting. And that chanting is identical with the Hotra priest. And this speech is the fire, which is its cosmic counterpart. So the divine form of fire, which is manifest in the individual as the organ of speech, is also the Hotra priest in the external sacrifice. See, you start seeing the oneness between the external and the internal. So it means that the sacrificer should look upon these two auxiliaries of the sacrifice, outer and the inner, or the Hotra priest and the organ of speech, as fire only. See, fire is subtler than the body or even the speech. So look at the subtler in the grosser. When we attach yourself to the subtler, he says you will get freed from attachment, which is a death. In the meditation on the divine form of fire, manifesting itself as the Hotra and speech, he says the sacrificer finds the means of liberation. So this meditation upon the identity of the individual speech, the Hotra, priest, and fire, can result in the final release. See, if we don't know what the goal is, the ultimate goal, if we think our goal is to just attain something physical from these sacrifices, then we won't reach there. So first we got to know what our goal is. Then we can bring our mind and meditate on this subtler aspect of it. When a person looks upon the priest and speech as identical with the fire principle, a person will no longer consider the sacrifice merely as an external ritual directed towards material attainment. The person will see that, hey, this is the aid to meditation on fire, the divine, the unblemished. Fire also, the priest also. And that's what's mentioned in the scriptures. And this is a conception of the unity, which we see many different ways is the nature of sacrifice. And that leads the sacrificer to liberation from individuality and separateness. See, in this whole Upanishad, these different meditations, the different rituals, different analogies are given where we feel the oneness with everybody. That there's a one, not many. So the meditation on fire makes the sacrificer pure like fire. and helps him to transcend the external and ritualistic performances and show. The sacrificer ceases to be a slave of attachment and desire. Because if we are attached to the worldly possessions, worldly things, we are slave. And these yajnas should take us out of this slavery. We should not dig ourselves deeper into this slavery by looking for worldly accomplishments. And this slavery is the one which is termed death in this verse. And in addition to this, the sacrificer, who is now identical with fire, will attain wisdom. Because fire is considered knowledge also, wisdom also. Even when we do our daily prayers in that Aarti Thali, we have that diya, that light of the diya is a symbolic representation of wisdom. So the sacrificer, who is now identical with fire, attains wisdom, power of memory, and eloquence. And it is through these that sacrificer has the advantage of freedom from lower tendencies. All the faults, all the negative tendencies, because when there's a light, there's no room for darkness. He has developed within himself by meditation, identification with the God of fire, who is purity personified. That's another way you can understand that. That's why we light the lamps in every faith. You see the light. So purity personified. So this meditation on fire is a means to liberation and final release. And what is this final release like? Assertion of identity with fire and speech is termed as final release here, because this is the conception of the unity which can be the means of a freedom from ignorance. And ignorance really means, the effect of ignorance is a differentiation. We feel that we are different than others. And this differentiation could be either we are better than others or smaller than others. That's a differentiation. So if the sacrificer meditates upon speech and the invoking priest as fire, their cosmic counterpart, he attains liberation from this death which he is mentioning over here. So next time when we do the prayers, whether as a Agnihotra or any other kind of form of prayers we do, meditate on that fire. Try to get oneness with that, without thinking that what you're going to get out of these meditations or these rituals. Look for oneness only. Let's look at verse number 4 also a little bit, at least the literal translation and the recitation, because it's a continuation now, the conversation between these two. Yagyavalkyehe iti ho vach yad idam sarvam ho ratrabhya aptam sarvam ho ratrabhyam abhipannam ken yajmano aho ratyor aptim उच्यत इति अधर्व्युन त्रिजाः चक्षुषः अदित्येन चक्षुवेम यज्ञस्य अधर्व्यो तद वद इदम चक्षुः सो साव अदित्यः सो अधर्व्यु स मुक्ति स अति मुक्ति. Yajnavalkya said, since all this is got by day and night and overpowered by them, through what does the sacrificer transcend the reach of day and night? Through the priest called Adharvyu, and the eye looked upon as the sun, the eye of the sacrificer is indeed the Adharvyu. Now, this eye of the sacrificer is that sun. Sun is the Adharvyu. That sun is the means of liberation, and liberation is transcendence. So we'll look at the details of this. Because the first question concerning the transcendence of rites performed by the force of natural attachment caused by ignorance has been replied. And the meditations together with the details he has given. But now another form of meditation is being introduced in this verse number 4. By doing this kind of a meditation, the sacrificer can overcome the limitation caused by the time factor, the day and night. We know that everything in the sacrifice undergoes a continual change. And change is another form of death, which is due to the passage of time. And over here, he is giving us the means by which the sacrificer might overcome the time factor. That is a subject matter of the next question raised by Ashval, actually. Everything, not only in the sacrifice, but also elsewhere in the world, is born, grows, and undergoes change on account of the passage of time. And over here, we are being informed the time which changes, which causes a change in objects, is not a homogeneous entity. The continual change in time causes change in the universe in general and in sacrifices in particular. Because this time is not permanent or even eternal factor, everything subjected by it also undergoes change. And the change does not confer stability to the accessories also, to the rites also. So now the only way out for the sacrificer to transcend the factor of time is through meditation. Because time is conceived of in two forms. The first is what we term the solar days and nights. The second is that which consists of lunar days and fortnights. So this mantra deals with the transcendence of time represented by the solar days and nights. So how to transcend this time factor consisting of days and nights through meditation is explained in this verse. And we will look at in detail about this next week. So I'll start from the details of this, how to transcend it. But meanwhile, start your meditations. Even the beginner's meditation. where we bring our mind at least at one spot. Don't let it fluctuate. And also remember, cleaner the mind, easier to calm the mind. That's why even Rishi Patanjali, what did he put first? Shauch. Shauch is first, the cleaning. We got to make sure that we keep on cleaning this mind of ours. Only then it will be calmed. Otherwise, it won't be calm. Dirty mind can never be calm. So make sure it's clean. Make sure we meditate every day. That's what our duty is as a sadhak. Let's stop it here and we'll start exactly from that point next week. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnase Purnamadaye Purnameva Vishishyate. Om Shanti 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 Om. Thank you very much.